Hey everyone, Sycra here, and in this video I'm going to be explaining my process in creating a piece of promotional art for an indie game called The Padre, which is, I think it's on Kickstarter right now, and hopefully it's coming out in the near future. It's an adventure game, and the creators just happen to be a fan of my channel, and so they thought it would be a cool idea if I could make a video of me doing the artwork, and I figured, well, why not turn it into an explain my process video and then kind of walk you through how I would be doing a piece of promotional art. So this is a screenshot from the game. This is a scale model of the character himself. Although I think there might be more detail in the game. Yeah, looks like there's more detail in this model. And then these are some sketches I already did of the character. Just getting a design, figuring out what type of style I guess I wanted. Is it more boxy? Is it more like less boxy? And this is, I did some additional work for the game. And then these are just thumbnails for what I thought would work. So this is probably where I should start with the thumbnails and walk you through what I was thinking. So the character, he has a torch a lot of the times. He also has a gun. So he's like a priest. And so in this one, I was thinking more about the composition, like a triangle composition, but maybe he's holding the torch. And I can always adjust these in terms of, exactly how they fit in the frame. So I'd probably have, his hand here and maybe the torch at a different angle, but it's just to get an idea. This one's sort of, he's holding the torch back here and the gun's pointing right at you. It's like perspective and stuff. This one's more of a iconic, just a flat graphic thing. I'm just trying to do a different shape. This one's kind of not really anything. This one's just a profile view with some fire and embers kind of blowing around. This one, it's again perspective, like this arm is coming forward and then this hand is holding a torch. I'd probably have to move the frame so there's more room for the torch here, and then kind of just reposition this. Now this one, he's holding the torch and sort of stepping into the darkness, whatever, failure. This one I just thought maybe it's all like blacked out, but you just see the glowing glasses, because in the game you can see like basically all you see of this character is he's in the shadow, so you do see more if he's in the light, but you see the glowing cross and the glowing glasses, so it's like, okay, all dark. Kind of failing here, running out of steam, but in terms of ones that I do think could work, I would say this one. I think this one could work. This one, in terms of just me liking it, I guess these three. So, yeah. So I have a choice between actiony, or kind of still. I kind of like this one, and I guess they all work for different things. So I guess what I'll do is just move them into a new image and see what they look like. As like a framed thing, and then maybe I can figure out which one I want to work on. So there's this one, and it's really good to do things in thumbnails if you can. I mean, I've talked about this a bunch of times, but it just makes your life so much easier. So probably I would position it more like that. And this gives room for any kind of, text. I suppose maybe even a bit more like that. So there's this forward momentum, and usually, like, if you have less space here than here, it feels like this person is pushing forward. Like, let's say push it here, feels like he's moving forward because there's so much space behind him. You get the sense of, like, if he was right in the middle, he's not really doing either. And then this way, it's like he's looking forward, but this way feels like he's moving forward. So I don't know. I guess that's okay. And then, if there was like any kind of title that they wanted to add, the Padre or whatever, could add it there. So that's one option. And okay. Let's see how this is. So again, I have to redraw this one a bit more to make room for the torch. Hide that. So yeah, maybe something like that. Maybe even tilt it a bit more. Yeah. So let's say the torch is back here, like in this area, and then the fire goes around like that. I can also use this lighting to light up the face, right? So that could be cool. So that's another option. And a third one. I actually like this one the least, I suppose. It's fine in terms of action and stuff, but it feels almost a bit too action-y in a way. Like, this guy's still like, this one looks almost too much of a badass military guy, whereas these ones, it feels like, okay, he's still just a regular guy. I think he's he's middle-aged, and yeah, so let's not do this one. This one's too action-y. So this one or this one, either of these can work. And whenever you do thumbnails, just, remember that you don't have to make them nice. Just do a lot and experiment with the ideas rather than necessarily making it super fancy. So yeah, I could go with either of these. So what I'm going to do is just treat it as if I'm working on both and probably spend a few minutes on them and get some values in. And that'll help me decide, what I want to go for. So let's start with this one. Okay, so the first thing I do is I duplicate it. I always keep the older version of the thing I'm working on. So this is the original. I should label them. Pen sketch. So I'm going to keep this original, and then this one I'm going to desaturate. Okay. And I'm going to fill it with a mid-tone. And this way I have some value on the page. And I do want it to be pretty dark, especially in this case. Like, I'm thinking most of this is going to be quite dark. So we have that. Can actually merge these. So now I've got this on its own layer. And I'm going to put in a bit more information. So I made a new layer with multiply, and I'm just going to darken this in places so I get a sense of the atmosphere, because I want a heavy atmosphere. So because of that, I'm going to actually go quite dark and keep it so he's lit by the torchlight, and then all this is going to be pretty much dark. The glasses are going to be bright though, so can go ahead and put in some of the brighter areas, but actually the flames are also going to be bright, so let's just get that in. And then all this part where the light shines is going to be bright, and then the glasses on his hair is kind of light, so you can go ahead and add like detail for that. And then let's just look at the character again. Not this one, not this one, this one. Okay, so he's got this kind of thing going around. So we can just have that, and then that should be a good enough indication. Maybe just give him some kind of, I don't know what they're called, those things on the side of your jacket thing. Put those there. So this one could work, you know, it's not terrible. And then just make it so the brightest part are the glasses. And then here it would say, you know, like the Padre or whatever they write, the title, right? So that's one option, which is okay. And see, that didn't take too long, so there's really no point trying to not do certain things, because it's like, oh, well, it's extra work if I have to do both of them. It's like, no, you can, at least for a while, you can just check and see which one is working better. Okay, so this one, is going to be a bit brighter, I imagine. I imagine it's going to be dark all here for the guy, and then, so again, we need to darken it. So the guy himself gets pretty dark. This whole area, the cloth, the clothes he's wearing, going to be dark. It's his arm back there. All right. Then we'll have like the torch here, and then this is gonna be lit up. So it's gonna create like a rim light. So let's darken all this area and this area. And now I'll probably keep the background a bit lighter, because this is all gonna be lit up by the torch. Okay, and need to go darker still for the coat, but it's gonna be darker in the front. So like the foreground, this part is gonna be the darkest, and so I'm gonna lighten up as I get towards the back. So that's gonna look like this is coming forwards, right? Because whenever you have like a dark value, it pushes things forward. When you have a very dark or a very bright value, it tends to push things forward. So here there's a lot of contrast, so it's going to feel like things are coming forward. And let's get the light from the side. Probably, like, what I'm going to do is, for this piece of art, I will be changing the character. I'm not going to make him look exactly like he does in the game. I'm going to make it, you know, stylized and like my own pictures, and then just treat it more like a mood piece or something, because I don't know how I'm going to do it. So yeah, so he has that collar going around like that, and then let's just put the cross things on the side. They kind of work. And then one back there, and let's put in some lights. So just going to use some color dodging to put in the lighter areas. So now I have the values. So that part's going to light up the glasses. And then the side of the face is going to get hit, maybe the nose a bit. and then this hand, it's gonna light up, and then all of this flame is definitely gonna be pretty bright. So gotta get that. Too much. So you have to be careful not to go too bright, or it's gonna take away from things. Like it's gonna take away from his the eyes being the focal point. So I'm gonna go bright, but you know, try and keep have some embers around. I'll try and keep the focus right here. And one of the ways of doing that is by actually darkening the face even more, just a bit, like especially near this the light, so you get like this dark, and then you get the light, so that's creating more contrast. So yeah, all right, good. So we have two roughs, this one. They're both fine. I guess I'll see how much I can do of them, and maybe, because they both have very different moods. This one feels a lot more quiet and kind of scary almost. I don't know, because the game is kind of like a horror type. It's an adventure game, but it's got like dark themes. So this one feels a bit comic booky, and this one is, yeah, it's a bit more somber, I guess. All right, let's look at the character again. Okay, so blonde hair, bright. Okay. All right, just gonna do a bit more on both, see how far I can get. So here I just Shift Control Alt E, which creates a duplicate layer. I'm gonna go ahead and flip. Try to do that pretty often here as well. I'll just make this one, Control Alt E. So now I have a duplicate of this thing, and probably what I want to do is actually move it more to this side just a bit, so I get a bit more room for that. And so compositional choice, make that a bit longer. Okay, so that's working a bit better. And okay, so usually I have the most energy in the drawing stage. Sometimes I get asked by students, how do you not lose the energy from the sketch? I don't know. I feel like I already figure like I'm going to lose the energy to a point. So it's more a case of just make sure your original drawing is so energetic that even when you lose some energy, it's still okay. All right. So just do a bit of cleanup now, and I'm going to switch brushes, and let's work on the silhouette a bit. So I'm going to have it so he's sort of coming towards us. So this type of curve that I put in, and here I'm just painting with like a normal layer, normal brush. This curve is very rounded, so we feel like he's coming at us, and then the hair is actually going back. So you've got this big rhythm going on, and then with the flame, I'm also going to have that big rhythm. Everything's moving around like that. So let's do that. Again, I'm simplifying the hair because, you know, it's what I do now. Try and keep things simple. And then here it's going to get kind of brighter as we get closer to the flame. Now, the more work you put on anything you do, the more you're going to, the more invested you get in it. So I know the more I spend time on this one, the more it's just there is this feeling of oh, well, this is the one I want to work on, because I don't know, it feels like you're putting in time and energy. And so you got to make sure you're bouncing around. So I will do a bit more on this, and then I'll probably switch to the other one, so I don't get too attached. And I suppose it's not terrible to be attached to what you're working on. It's just depending on what you want, it might be bad to get attached. All right, so I'll probably shorten his chin a bit, and kind of change the shape of the cross here, but kind of like it better that way. I can fix it later. And I'm not sure how far I'm gonna get in this. I'm gonna work for an hour and a half, but I don't know how much is gonna get done, so let's just gonna hope that by the end there is some knowledge that got transmitted. Okay, so with the hair, I try and think in terms of big shapes and interesting shapes and parts that I suppose how to divide it. For instance, I don't want to do this type of thing with the hair, make each strand really obvious, because that's gonna look, I don't know, to me that looks bad. What I want to do is have bigger areas, this is kind of big, and then maybe a smaller one there, and then a bigger one here. And then the eyebrows as well probably are going to be light, so let's get those in. And I'll probably switch now to this one. So I'm going to work on this one silhouette that's the big thing, because so much is riding on this part, just this reed, that's the important part. And you have to kind of get a sense for what is important in the thing you're trying to convey. So in this one, the hair is, just pulled straight back. Because the character looks like this, there's no information here. It's voxel art, so I can kind of make up stuff, and I just have to hope that the creators think it's cool. Usually, if you do something cool, people will be okay with it, so that's kind of important. So I'm going to darken it towards the back of the hair and lighten it near the front. And now I have to think about the planes of the face. So this is a side plane with the nose. Probably get darker. And then this part is facing forward, so that's going to lighten up. I'm also thinking how the glasses have some light coming off them. And so, I don't think they actually glow I think that was just a design choice for the game. But it's something that I still want to maintain, just a bit of that feeling as if they are glowing. All right, so the mouth. I think the expression I want to go for is something pretty somber. Like I don't imagine this guy's like super happy. Although that might just, maybe he is. Maybe he's very happy. Maybe his faith is giving him some joy or pleasure or something in life, but I don't know. In this case, he's not that happy. So I had a chance to play like a beta version of the game, or not beta, alpha, and seems pretty cool. I'm a big fan of adventure games, and it's one of those adventure game type things. They used to be popular in the 90s. You used to have adventure games like there was the LucasArts games. There's a bunch of them. I really liked Full Throttle and games like that. So things like this, it's just, to me anyway, it's nice to work on that. Seeing that the chin kind of has grown, or at least it looks bigger, so gotta alter that. Sometimes things just, once you add value, it changes how they initially read, and so it's pretty important to get information down as quickly as you can. And when I mean information, I mean like filling out stuff, figuring out like what is the background and what are certain colors or certain values, what is the mood, stuff like that, so that you get a sense of what you're looking at. It's always, it's something I find difficult, but keeping the big picture in mind, making sure you're not getting too much tunnel vision, I think that's really important. I'm gonna give him like a bit more of a collar in the back, just to be a bit sympathetic with the sharp shapes that I like to use. So I'll have that, and all right. So I'm thinking about a lot of the planes, like, okay, so this jaw, does that catch light? And what's it gonna do if I add that? Because I want him to kind of look sort of like he's got one of those muscly faces. You know when they, like, this part of the jaw is very pronounced, and you have like this and then this, and very muscly type face. I'm like going for that, so something I'm trying to think about is, you know, how am I gonna do this? Maybe in this part it actually gets pretty bright. I'm gonna indicate, or I'm not sure if I will, but I'll try to indicate just the eye very, very slightly back here. That if you look very hard, you can see, oh, he has an eye and he looks at things, but I don't want it to be too eye-catching. And let's get the glasses sort of worked out. So I'm gonna use a big brush and try and get this in one stroke, so I get like a stronger line. Because if I try and do like a bunch of little lines for this thing, it's not gonna be as straight as if I just get one line and then try and just get that in. Okay. that. A bit of highlight there. And maybe a bit of highlight right here as the frame turns. And I'm not sure if I should add like a bit of a 5 o'clock shadow, maybe something like that. Yeah, I don't know. Because I figure if he's got these, if he's exploring for a while, he probably doesn't have time to shave, but at the same time I don't really know how long the game lasts in terms of maybe the whole thing takes place in just a few hours and he's not going to get that much of a beard going on. But yeah, alright. So now let's get a bit more light, because I feel like right now there's very little light. So here I want some more, here possibly, and then here. Gonna go ahead and alter the cross shape again to just make it a bit more of a shape and less of just like it's a bit plain how it was before. So something like that feels a bit more artistic. Alright, and I'm gonna put in some really bright whites right in the glasses. That's just so that your eye is definitely gonna look there first. But now I have to get some lights elsewhere. So I have to get rid of some of these black lines on things. Like, see, you still have the drawing. Don't really want that to show. So like that to sort of fade off. And then I'm gonna think about some of the forms of his face. You know, maybe they're little wrinkles and things he has. I think all of that could add to his character. It lets you know what muscles he uses a lot. And there's a lot that you can say with things like that, little character things. Get an eyebrow in. Work on some of the bigger forms. So I'm using a lot of like alt-click to pick a value and then place it where I think it should go. And you know, just changing some of these shapes so they imply different things. For instance, see, if I do this, it implies that the nose gets really wide here, whereas if I do this, it implies that it's very thin, and then it gets wider back here. If I do this, it shows like, okay, there's a bridge. If I did this, he now has like a broken nose. So you can do a lot with how you place these shapes, but that also means that they're very important to get right, because you're changing the character even if you alter it just slightly. And put a bit of light into that eyebrow. All right, and I'm going to darken the area just before this silhouette, again, just to make it pop more. So I do want it to be fairly graphic. Even though I am adding values and shifts like that, at the end of the day, do want it to be pretty graphic as an image. Okay. So I'm missing some of the lights. I guess got lost. So I'll go ahead and put in some of these light spots from the flames. And then having this like flame kind of go almost like it's behind him, but feeling like it goes through almost, or drawing it as if it kind of goes through him makes it feel like there's a thing passing through. I don't know. It's kind of nonsense, but I try and think about areas where I can incorporate things that help you associate certain things, like psychological things, like something passing through a person, or you know, maybe if the person is really, if the image is of a person who has a lot of weight on their shoulders or something, just making it dark at the top can enhance that feeling of like, oh, there's a bunch of pressure on this person. Alright, just a bit more light and then I can move on to the other one again. And I mean, for an hour and a half of drawing, it's fine if I just I figure if I take 2 images to a sort of, maybe not finished, but semi-finished state might be okay. The more you do stuff, the more you get an understanding of how long it takes. For me, I don't know. I feel I'm kind of variable in time to an extent, but I can usually know that in the first 3 hours I'll probably have something that, like, I try and get most of the work done in the first hour and a half, and then the rest is just time, like rendering, coloring, getting your values right, stuff like that. Becomes much more important as you forgot what I was gonna say, sorry. I think I've already mentioned how absent-minded I get when I try and talk and draw at the same time. That's why I'm really hoping this doesn't turn out too bad. The last picture I did, the last explaining my process, or I should say the first explaining my process video, and I kind of wasn't really happy with the results, and some people in the comments were asking why. It's really a case of I didn't feel the colors were working well the way I wanted them to. I thought the drawing itself was sort of okay. I don't like what I did there. Like, it makes it look too much like the head is turned, but that just makes it weird in terms of perspective. Because like if I imply that there's the second glass here, then I have to change the forehead to be more like that, add a bit more of this, bring that in. So yeah, I wasn't really happy with the values and the colors. They felt muddy. I kind of was panicking a lot while doing it because I'm not good under pressure. I'm not good at drawing while talking or trying to make a piece, and pretty much when I'm on my own doing stuff, I'm pretty inconsistent. with results, but then it's fine if no one sees it because, hey, whatever, you know, a lot of people don't get things right away, but over time you can sort of correct things. But when you're doing it in front of people, there's this feeling like you want to show them what you're worth in a way, show that you know something, I guess. And I don't know, I felt like I didn't quite do a good job of that. So I'm gonna put a bit of detail in the ear, but not like tons. But it kind of bothers me when people don't put any detail, like they don't get the ears, they don't give them any consideration. So I'm gonna put just a bit to show that they're not just blobs. All right, let's look at the other one. Okay, he looks younger in this. All right, so let's get this torch in because that's pretty important. So he's holding this torch. Suppose like it can lighten up around here, not that much, but get a bit lighter, and then as we get towards the tip, can create the fire. And I'm thinking about not necessarily like exactly how real fire would look, but sort of graphic shapes I can incorporate to make it more of an interesting illustration, not necessarily like a perfectly realistic thing. So I'm thinking in terms of swirls and just ways of creatively putting down information. All right, so now this part of his face is going to light up quite a bit. Trying to make sure the glasses are the right size because this one they don't quite look like they're the same size right now. This one's a bit thin. Not really happy with these lips. I'm gonna thin them out a bit. Kind of want to go for pretty thin features. Gotta get his hand in. Try and think, whenever I'm dealing with hands, I try and think of like a bigger shape. And not really something that's made up of like fingers and stuff, but like what is the big shape first, and then worry about breaking it down into smaller shapes. And that way I can imply detail rather than necessarily have to draw it. I think that's a pretty good thing, is to make sure you're implying detail. Or at least it saves time, and that's kind of how the world looks anyway. When you look at things, you're not necessarily seeing everything, you're just seeing some things, and then your brain fills in the blanks. So. Can work on that after. And remember that when you have something on the page, it's easier to correct something that's there than something that's not there. So what I mean is, if I'm drawing a hand and I have like a rough hand shape, at some point I'll be able to look at that and think like, well, if that kind of looks like a hand, except for this part looks off and that part looks off. And then by fixing those things, you're working on getting something that looks more like a real thing. Whereas if you just started with nothing and maybe you're just going straight to line or from lines, which isn't, it's not bad, but it's harder to imagine the thing you're supposed to see. Okay, so we've got that. Let's see how we're doing for time. Alright, so there's 42 minutes left. I think we're making okay progress. It's not the fastest, but something's bothering me about these glasses, so whenever that happens, I try and flip. Like whenever I feel like something's off, I think it's really a good habit to flip, just so that your brain gets a chance to adjust. And I'm realizing I kind of liked it before when the glasses were a bit thinner. So I'm going to go and change that. And then add some more lights in places like there. Possibly this whole area's in shadow. And this part's going to catch the light. And then we go back into shadow. Maybe I can add a few lines for the eyebrows to distinguish them. All right. Let's get the ear in. So with ears, again, you don't have to draw too much attention to them. They're not super important, but I think it is important to get them at least okay. And sometimes parts that you don't want to draw attention to actually take longer. It's weird, but to make something look not attention grabbing, sometimes it requires like you almost have to paint it and then knock it back. So yeah, I'm working on the shape now of this hair, trying to find this flow to it. So this creates something that looks kind of artificial, but that's where I think stylistic choices come into play. It's like, what do you want? Do you want it to look graphic, or do you want it to look real? Because if you want it to look real, you kind of have to sacrifice some of the graphicness. But if you do make it graphic, you get the advantage of things just looking kind of interesting. And so it's a judgment call how you approach these things. So, how I'm approaching the hair is really trying to think more in terms of shape than actually hair, and just hope that it'll work out. Alright, now I'm going to put in the rim light so I can start dealing with that. In terms of working black and white, it's just the way I like to work. It's something that, for me anyway, I have the most comfort doing that. And I mean, although it's in my comfort zone, I have tried starting with color directly and doing other things, but I've noticed, for me anyway, it works so much easier if I am starting black and white, and that's not true for everyone. It's just the way it is for me. And so at some point you have to kind of, because I did want to just be one of those people who, I could go directly into color, and it seemed like a romantic idea. And sometimes we get these ideas of how we want things to be, because we want to be a certain type of artist, like cool. I want to be a cool artist, and the cool ones, they just do things like they don't need guidelines, or they just go straight into color. Okay, fine, but not everyone does that, and sometimes you're just shooting yourself in the foot if you're too, if you have too many expectations of yourself. Sometimes you're not, because it can also be useful sometimes to, keep saying sometimes, sorry about that. It can be useful to want something and then to strive towards it. So for instance, maybe you really want to draw with pen. You want to be able to do that. Well, in the beginning, you might not be good with it. But over time, if you just keep practicing, you do get better. But that's kind of different. What I'm talking about is not, you haven't done it and then you try it. It's more like, no, you've done it a bunch. You've tried different things. And then it's just a case of, well, I have tried all these things and I do see what works for me better and gives me the better results. And so I'm sticking with that. And that's I think it's completely fine and legitimate to be doing that. All right, now I'm going to take a soft brush and just get in some value transitions, because this is starting to get a bit too flat looking in places. So by adding some subtle gradations, I get more information back in the piece. I can say this part's more in shadow, and then this is turning around the form, can put that ear a bit back, add a bit of variation in the hair. And I think it's a pretty good process to be creating things almost like flat shapes at first, and then to add form to it with, you know, gradients and soft shading and stuff. So there's that. Okay, now I'm gonna think about the edge, like the silhouette of this. So the brighter I make this, the more it's gonna catch your eye. So I gotta be careful about that. And I'm gonna flip it just so yeah, maybe that's a bit too bright. Now with like background elements like the flame and stuff, you can actually use these types of things to serve as perspective things, like vanishing points or just perspective lines, motion lines. By just leading them in certain ways, you can lead people through the composition. Right. I'm probably gonna lose some of what I like about this when I bring it into color. I'm a big fan of black and white, actually. I like it a lot. I like black and white illustrations. I like pure pencil illustrations, stuff like that. There's something I enjoy quite a bit. So I always feel sad in a way that, oh, can't just stay black and white, it's gotta be colored. But I guess if you go monochrome or kind of monochromatic, you get to keep some of that. Although I still like color, and I still like to use color. There's still this thing where I like how black and white illustrations look as well. And often I like how they look a bit more. Alright, so pretty soon I'll need to start thinking about colors and what I'm gonna have where, how these things are gonna work. So I'm thinking kind of like blues, maybe turquoises and oranges, because we've got the flame. So orange and teal tend to work well together. It's a nice, and it's a bit overdone nowadays, but it's a pretty pleasant color combination. So maybe something like that. But I can just screw around with it, so let's just do that. Throw on a gradient map. And see, here we have some teals. And that could work. That's pretty cool. So I could use that for the flame, and then use something else. Even that. Some of these are, yeah, like that. That's kind of what I'm going for. Right. So let's just experiment a bit more. All right, and you can always adjust these to make it more what you want. So maybe I want it to get a bit more saturated and orange at this point. And then I want it to get a bit warmer in the shadows. So maybe something like that. So okay, can take this and also duplicate it and put it on the other one as well. So we'll have two. One is this. I'll probably need to adjust this one's colors, and then one is like that. And it's just a starting point. It's not like this is the end coloration. It's just, well, whatever. All right, so let's adjust this a bit. All right, so for this one, maybe I don't want to use this gradient. I always find it fun going through different things. I mean, that could work if this blue was a different color. So what we could do is actually add some reds to this. Not sure about any of that. Yeah. I guess this is the bad part about showing the full process is things like this you can just spend a really long time figuring out. I mean, I could even take something like this, for instance, and then throw a hue saturation on it, and then just look for interesting color combinations. Yeah, not sure. Could also just try ripping off the actual colors from the screenshot, because these are pretty nice, so could try that. No, probably just manually do it. All right, let's just pick colors and do this. So I want to get a very grayed out tone for the face. I don't want to go too colorful at all. So that's what I'm doing here. I could take like some of this green and just warm it to maybe something more like that, and then let it read as a warm color. Could add some desaturation throughout, and then really focus my energy in color on some of this area. So go ahead and put in an overlay layer and get like a warm tone. Now we're getting a bit of like greens, so I'm gonna take those parts and bring them towards reds again. Although it's getting a bit too dark here. So I'm using overlay. If you want to remove overlay effects, you basically just pick pure gray and then acts like an eraser. And again, I'm just putting in like a very rough idea of color, of where I want things. So something like that is a starting point. And then I can just go ahead and actually just paint in color as I want it. So for instance, these can be yellow, and I can think about the shape of these more. So basically just drawing with shape as opposed to drawing with form. Not really thinking too much about the forms, just thinking about interesting shapes. I'm not sure if I should put reflected light. Maybe like a secondary light source. I mean, could work, but at this point, I'm not sure if it would be unnecessary to do that. and put some of these blues into his clothing. I don't even know how much shows in terms of, you know, on video, especially after rendering. Some of the colors will probably get lost, but probably want just a bit of light coming up here as well. I'm just adding a bit more color with color dodge, just to lighten some of these areas, and a bit more saturation, so I can color pick and pick from that. So we're gonna add a bit of red. And I have this little navigator here, and I do look at that quite often in terms of checking up, you know, what are things looking like. So some of these lines are actually still from the original sketch. So, I mean, they can just gotta clean up stuff like this. It's probably a bit inelegant, I suppose, to see, you know, this process, and I actually had a much more clean process in the past, but what I found is that sometimes it's not bad to be messy. It can kind of create interesting results. So I'm not super worried about that anymore. Used to be, but not anymore. Alright, and probably I could have some of this orange on this clothing. Just a bit though. So I'm gonna take just a bit of that and use it, and let these colors kind of mix. And I can also think in terms of shape again, in like the collar. Like, it doesn't have to be so simple. It could have like a little part that comes out like this. This part might have like a break and then could resume. Maybe there's another break here, and then it continues back here. Maybe there's like a bit of, it's too strong. Maybe there's a bit of light on the edge, like a rim light from behind. And could put some even in the hair. Probably need to get some indication of the glasses and things. So, I mean, now it's the time where I kind of slow down a lot and it's just a slow painting process. You know, when people say that they spend hours and hours painting, I feel like it's true that you probably put in many hours of painting, but in terms of the heavy lifting, usually it's all done in the first few hours, maybe 2-3 hours. In my case, the first hour and a half is like crucial, and then the rest is pretty easy compared to that. It's just rendering, and I find rendering almost just a mindless thing. I mean, at first it's not when you're thinking a lot about, well, what's the light and the shadow and stuff, but after it can just become this this process of sort of zoning out and painting in little details. And I have a problem with sort of overdoing things like that and then losing some of the energy. So speaking of which, I'm gonna just try and use bigger strokes and be a bit more bold with some of this. Maybe I'll add like some dark, almost black shadows in places. I usually don't like to do that on skin, but I think in this case it might make it look a bit more like comic booky, like graphic, maybe, having all this contrast. So some sharper elements into the image. Maybe lighten just a bit back here. So that's a lot. So what I'll do is I'll probably tone it down, but maybe it could work. This nose has been bothering me throughout the shape. Just want to make it a more interesting shape. He's looking too old now. I keep it super straight. Alright. And same with this. So some of the simplification happens after. I try and get as much as I can in the beginning, but it's kind of like when I draw. A lot of times I draw very sharp things and sharp pictures, but oftentimes they start out as very round. Like I use a lot of circles and rounder shapes to get things like gesture and energy and movement. And then I bring in things. So for instance, like his hair is flat now, right? So I might go ahead and put in like some strands that break that flatness, but just a bit. So it still kind of looks flat, but because I don't mind it looking more flat. I think it works with the style at times, so. And then this area is pretty dark. So can actually get quite dark under the chin area. Maybe in certain spots like the nose gets kind of dark. Right on this part of the glasses. Actually, I should make that the darkest spot, like right here, so it draws your eye. And possibly change the shape of these glasses, make them a bit more correct, because right now they don't really look all too let's look at the other one, see how it was doing. All right, that kind of looks kind of unfinished now. All right, well, maybe I don't need that much. Actually, let's just play around with layer modes. Sometimes this is fun to do, or just something that can be, you can get interesting results, let me put it that way. So I just scroll through the different layer modes and I see what happens. And like, that's weird, but I'm not going to use it, but it's weird. Something to keep in mind. See, with this, I actually could use that. So what I could do, for instance, is copy this layer and then Control U and shift it. So instead of blue, it's red-ish, like that. All right, now if I change this to screen, it will make it so, so this one doesn't need to be that anymore. But it'll make it so that area is brighter. So just normally it's like that. Maybe something like that is a bit better. Okay, so let's do that. Let's just change this to screen. And then see how it kind of brightened that area. I'm not sure if it's exactly what I want though, but it's something. All right. So I don't have too much time left, but I can work on this a little bit. So big brushes, try and block in as much as I can. At least now I have some values on the page that I can work with. So, yeah. Hand going in the background. This comes around. Can add more detail to like this area. Maybe make this chin stand out a bit more. So I get to correct a lot of the shapes at this stage. Look for areas where it could have been simplified better. Make those adjustments. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it gets boring at this part because I really run out of things to say. It's just like, I don't know, fiddle with it for a bunch of hours and noodle and keep going and see what happens. So that's all it is for a while now. I guess I would want well, first of all, I want those glasses to be brighter, so I'm probably gonna brighten them up a bit with a bit of dodginess. Just a bit. So that got too attention grabbing there, so I'm just gonna throw on a layer mask and then big black brush and just knock it down a bit. Yeah. And maybe the whole thing is still a bit too bright, so that's with nothing, that's all the way, and can adjust it, maybe something like that. Then I want a bit more darkness here, and sort of vignetting it so that I create this rhythm, like so, something like that, this type of oof, rhythm. Alright, and then some more details in that. Gonna have to adjust this. Here I'm just smudging some stuff. Put a break there. Maybe have a bit of cool light behind. I'm not sure if I actually like that, but let's just see. I might shift the saturation and the hue a bit, because it's not a fan. Maybe I should just fix it with color bonds. All right, go on the shadows. Mid-tone's a bit warmer. that's like really strong, so I'm gonna turn that down. And it looks like time's up for these, so hopefully this helped someone somehow. Probably not, but I don't know. I hope it does. I know I'm not the greatest artist, so I don't claim to be. Sometimes people feel the need to let me know that, but don't worry, I already know. But yeah, okay, so let's just do this and this. Guess originally they were this way, so be this and this. And we can just compare to the pen sketch. Boop, 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 boop. This one. Boop, boop. It was better before. God damn it. Alright, well, I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.